it's not a one-man show. It's a team effort to get this jumbo to fly, and everybody was so excited about it, and there was so much energy and motivation.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here on the Smack Hospitality Podcast. This episode features Robert Herr, General Manager at the Buergenstock Resort in Lucerne, and we talked about what it's like to run one of the hottest properties in Switzerland at the moment, and how his career as an international GM with stops including Berlin, Beirut, Paris, and Prague helps him today. Robert also shared some insights into the recent announcement that the World Economic Forum was moving to the Buergenstock from Davos in 2021. Enjoy the show. Robert, thank you for being on the show. It's great to have you here. I'm going to start with a very simple question. The first time you went to the Buergenstock, give me your thought process behind what you saw for those that have never been.
Great, Fritz. Thank you very much for having me on the show today. My first impression. So when I first got here, I actually arrived on a construction site. So my first view was onto cranes and people working very hard, trying to put together this magnificent resort. But then on a second view, I saw the views from the Buergenstock Resort down onto the lake and over central Switzerland. And I must say, I was very, very much impressed about what I saw. Actually, I was blown away by the view. So my impressions at that time, when I first came here to visit the site, before I actually started, I said, this is where I want to work.
Mm. I can't blame you. How many times have you had to explain to people when they asked you and they heard that you're the GM there, of why this is such a magnificent view? Because I had the pleasure of being there myself. I took the gondola, I took the boat to get to the gondola, then took the gondola up to the hotel. I mean, as if that wasn't cool enough. Then you have these views and the you can literally see over the whole lake that is beneath you. Is it still special? I mean, do you still? I mean, how long have you been at the Buergenstock now, Robert?
So I've been here 4 years actually.
Okay.
And
but it must be still special, right? You must still sometimes stand on the balcony or on the terrace and have to pinch yourself because it's just awesome.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. You know, I think and there's some very. I mean, I don't want to say that I traveled to so many beautiful places in the world. I've traveled to a few, and there are some wonderful places. But for me, this place here is very special, and it's not just the view, but the view is even today when I see a sunset here, or I even see a sunrise, because actually. We not only have beautiful views over the lake, but we on the south side we have beautiful views over the Alps.
Yeah.
And I think the Buergenstock Resort or the Buergenstock Mountain is such a unique place in Switzerland where, you know, we're 500 meters above the lake.
Yeah.
And you have this view up and, you know, this until the end of the sort of the horizon view all over central and even Switzerland and even into France. And you're not too high where everything becomes so microscopic, and you're not too low where, you know, you don't have this vast view on the lakeside. So I think this is very special, and there are no other places like that here in Switzerland. And then on the south side, you have this wonderful view over sort of the Alps, the pre-Alps, and this makes it just a very, very special place. Again, not just in terms of the views, but there are a lot of other things here that make it special. But that is something that even today, as you said, I always have to pinch myself to say, is this for real?
Yeah. Now, Robert, tell me if you look at the resort and obviously the views and the, you know, the spa areas, the restaurants, and so on and so forth. one would assume that the majority of your guests is mostly leisure related. Is that correct, or is there a good percentage as well that you have in terms of conference? I mean, we're talking pre-COVID. We'll get to the whole COVID situation in a second. But pre-COVID, was the majority leisure? Is that still what you experience? People coming for a getaway, and how do you reckon you position yourself in those markets?
So leisure is for sure a very important aspect of our business model. We have many guests who come here for the recreational aspect of it, be it guests coming on the weekend or maybe for small vacations during the week. With the facilities that we offer, so the leisure aspect is very important, very crucial to the success of our resort. That said, it's not our only pillar that we're building our business model on. We very much also have, you mentioned already, conference events, social events, but also corporate events. We have a lot of conference facilities here that are in an environment which is also unusual, because normally you go and spend your conferences sort of, let's say, in big box conference hotels. Most of them are located in city centers. And here it's very special because we can cater to small and large conferences, but in a very unique setting. You almost have your conference in nature. And then a third aspect, and also very important, and also very important for the success of our resort, is the still nascent but fast-growing medical tourism. So we cater also to guests coming to us. They want to have preventative medical checkups, or they want to go on a detox, or they want to just get out into the nature, be mobile, be active. We have special programs for that. So they come for that, if you want, more medicinal, recreational aspect of it. So it's not just escapism, but it's really something they want to do for their self-benefit, maybe a lifestyle change and so forth. And we also cater to this type of guests. And then we also have residential guests. So we have guests who actually live here in the resort.
Yeah, long stay.
Long-term residents. That's a very distinct. So we have, next to all the different hotels that we have to cater to these different groups that I just explained, we have 67 residences and villas, and those are really designed for long-term living and people who want to have it either as a first or a second residence, and want to spend a longer period of time here with us.
Yeah. And then, Robert, all of a sudden, come March this year, COVID-19 comes around the corner. Walk me through your initial, and I realize 1,000 things have happened since March, but walk me through your initial thoughts, measures, prayers, even when this came around, because for those who haven't been to the Buergenstock collection, it's a massive area. Like, there is a lot of stuff going on up there in your resort. How did you go about managing all of this, and in times of a global pandemic, when all of a sudden things were important, like additional hygiene measures, this whole social distancing? Did you put a task force in place? Did everyone play their part? Walk me through how you went about with this with your team.
Yes. So I mean, I remember you said it was back in March. Actually, so many things have happened. So it seems like already, again, it's been a long time ago. But
a lifetime ago,
yeah. I still remember vividly, the situation, and also at the time, sort of the decision and the quick decision making you had to do, because nobody knew what was coming and how bad would it be, and what should we do now. But it's funny. It was sort of the situation. I was actually on vacation in end of February. And this is when it started to get, it started in January, but I think most of us thought, okay, this is going to come. This is a problem in China. And, some of it may spill over into Europe and to other parts of the world. But, let's not make it bigger issue than it is. And it sort of started to develop very rapidly into something much bigger than probably most of us thought or expected at the time. And I was on vacation sort of end of February. And I was at another part in the world, And I kept in touch with the office, and I saw this. I was following the news, and I also started to see that we were starting to get in cancellations and things were getting bad. And I thought to myself, my God, I think this is going to be much worse than what we're all anticipating.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I got back, and when I landed back in Zurich from a very long flight, I remember it was, I think, on a Friday afternoon, or on a Friday. I called up my team, and I said, let's on Monday morning, let's have a crisis meeting to understand what we want to do.
Yeah.
So following that, I mean, then it went very quickly. By the following week, I think this was already sort of after the last weekend of February, first week of March.
Yeah.
I already made the decision. Look, let's monitor this, but let's be prepared to not to close the resort, maybe to close parts of the resort in case we get more cancellations and people get concerned about traveling and so forth. So we basically, and in Switzerland, the government only reacted by mid-March to say, okay, we're going to do a shutdown. So these 2 weeks before the actual shutdown happened were so critical, because we had reacted already, and we put together, with my department heads, we had a great crisis management team. Everybody understood that this was very serious now, and we had to react. And of course, our first concern was always, making sure that the guests were safe, the employees were safe, that we could sort of bring the business down to a level without putting anybody at danger, and also making sure that we don't lose more money than we've had already lost just looking at the cancellations and the lack of new bookings coming in. So we reacted very quickly with it, and we were actually very well prepared when the lockdown came. Mind you, in Switzerland, the hotels were not mandated to close. So we kept one hotel open. We actually kept our Wald Hotel open, where we also have our medical facilities. We also cater to rehab patients. So we kept them. So we kept the business going. I actually had a few guests international guests. They were afraid to travel abroad. They felt very safe in Switzerland, so they wanted to stay. They stayed with us then for actually almost 3 months, and that was great. And so we continued our business, but at the same time, we had to now think, what are we going to do? I had about 800 staff. What are we going to do with all the staff? And, here we have a similar like what you have in Germany, the Kurzarbeit, or the short time work. So a lot of that was implemented, but it was a whole new situation for everybody.
Sure.
And, but I have to say, everybody, the whole team pitched in tremendously. And I think out of this crisis, we saw it as an opportunity also to grow and to readapt and recalibrate our business. Then when we sort of got more confidence about reopening more facilities back in May and then June, and we then reopened, I would say, more than half of the resort by middle of June. And then the summer was actually quite successful for us. So we were able to capture a lot of the local and the domestic business. We also had some business returning again from Germany, France, so sort of the neighboring countries.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would say up until October, we were looking at very positively at rebuilding that business.
Yeah.
And now, of course, as it has happened in many other countries, the second wave hit, and also in Switzerland. And we had to again recalibrate or adjust our business model to this new situation. But overall, we remain open, and we still have a lot of guests. I mean, just last weekend I was fully booked again. So people want to travel.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of COVID-19 fatigue. People want to get out still.
Yeah.
They understand the seriousness of it, but they at the same time, with all the precautionary measures that we're taking, that guests are also respecting, we're able to still cater to a large part of our business.
Yeah. Robert, explain to me the majority of your admin team because that's a question that we got asked quite a bit before, and the majority of your admin team, has it remained sort of in a home office facility? And what's your opinion on the whole home office gig, let's call it, in relation to hotels? Because I realize obviously for some of your operation staff, they can't do home office, right? The chef has to be there, the waiter, the bartender has to be there. But explain to me how you as a fairly experienced, and you've been around the world. You've had different people work for you from different cultures. What's your take on the whole home office for hotels scenario related to the admin staff?
Okay, yeah. So of course I think there are two ways of looking at it. I think the home office is great in a way that you say, okay, look, it's better for you to stay home rather than being in an office environment where you may either bring the virus or get the virus. And a lot of the works anyway in the admin, I think you have to differentiate. You could have somebody sitting in a finance position
Yeah,
where maybe you have less touch with the clients. But if
yeah,
you're in a sales position, for instance, where you still need to meet clients or
yeah,
at the resort or on site, it's a little bit different. But overall, I think to have that flexibility between home office and being on site is a great tool, because
yeah,
I think it makes a lot, it makes our people more comfortable about working. But at the same time, we also see that people do want to be in the hotel environment, because we are a high touch business, and it's not just transactional. It's about, you meet people, you have a coffee with them. I'm not talking just about guests, but also about your colleagues. Sometimes ideas pop up because you do that, around the water cooler, those water cooler conversations that you have. That whole social engagement is still very important, and I mean that in the positive sense. So I think home office has to be done in a measured way, but to say 100% home office is good or bad, or to say 100% being on site is good or bad, you know, I am more of the opinion that it should be done in a measured way. But personally, my preference is to be on site and also to see my own people on site, because I also felt now that when you don't have that live connection, there is something missing. And
mm, sure, not the
I
same.
don't think you can replace that. You cannot fully replace that just through a video call, or because video calls and all that, and they're great. At the same time, I also think that a lot of people are getting tired of it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any
spending so
funny
much time
stories?
on the screen.
Any funny stories you want to share with us, Robert, from the video calls? Any colleagues show up in their pajamas to a video call, or a business partner that had their dog run in the background, or something good there? While we're at it.
Since this is an official recording, I'm very careful with what I'm saying, so I cannot comment on that.
Okay. All right, Robert. Tell me now. Amidst all this, crisis, and we'll get to what your prediction is of how and when the business and the travel world will recover. All of a sudden, congratulations are in order, because the World Economic Forum has decided to move away from Davos towards you guys. Now, I realize you're probably not going to want to share the security details with us, which I don't understand, but that's okay. But
Yeah.
give us a quick explanation. I mean, I can't imagine it being easy to negotiate and discuss such a global event amidst having to run a hotel during COVID, or a resort even during COVID-19. Explain it. Like, give us like a brief overview, if you can, of how that felt. I imagine it's something that you haven't done before either, running such an event, and what that will bring to you guys in 2021.
Yeah, it's been very interesting. I mean, first of all, we're very grateful. We feel, of course, very privileged and honored that the WEF has chosen the Buergenstock Resort, along also with certain activities in Lucerne,
Yeah,
to be the location for the next annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, so 2021. That's number one. I think it's first of all, it's not only great for the resort, but I think it's really fantastic for Lucerne, for the entire region, for central
sure.
Switzerland.
Yeah,
Because if it happens, and the WEF was very clear about it, they will only hold the annual meeting if the safety and the well-being of the participants can be guaranteed, or let's say we, from our side, of course, we can do it, but I think the overall context of COVID-19 needs to be
Sure. Evaluated at the
such
time.
a stage that
Yeah.
they feel comfortable about holding such a big event with so many people. So, but we are optimistic that it's going to take place, and it came at a time to us. Like you said, we were busy with so many other things, and the decision not to hold it in Davos in January was made at the end of August. And shortly, shortly after that, I was also contacted and said, would you be interested in holding this event at your place, and could you do it? And and then from there on, the discussions and the conversations and also the negotiations started to unfold.
Sure.
So of course it was and we were under a lot of time pressure because the WEF also wanted to have a decision
An idea, yeah,
soon
sure.
enough in order to announce it to their members.
Yeah.
So it was very, very intense. I think it was probably one of the most intense weeks for me that I had in a long, long time. But very, very gratifying, and also a great experience, not only for me but also for the team, because it's not a one-man show. It's a team effort to get this jumbo to fly.
Sure. Yeah.
And everybody was, everybody was so excited about it, and there was so much energy and motivation, especially after the last months that were quite difficult. But everybody pushed in, and nobody minded doing in the extra time and all that. So it was a great experience. And I always said to my team, I said, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. I think for us, just to be able to be in that pitch and to participate in something so big is immensely valuable for all of our experiences. So, and at the end, when it came, and when we got the green light, it was of course very, very gratifying.
Yeah, Robert, is that something you reckon is going to happen more frequently now? I mean, if you look at the way that the travel world has worked previously, more people were traveling than ever pre-COVID-19, and so on and so forth. And now, major events like the World Economic Forum, for whatever reason that may be, changes to change the location to something that's a little bit more, maybe a little bit smaller of a venue, but with just as much, prestige or modernity. And is that something that we're going to see, Robert? That some big events, some travel trends are just going to monumentally change because people like to be in a more confined space where it's easier maybe to move about and stay somewhat within the same location, or do you reckon we're going to go back to traveling just the way it was before COVID-19? Because I've heard that as well. I've heard from experts from the industry who've said, listen, the travel fatigue, as you already mentioned earlier, is going to be so big. We're going to go right back to where we came from, potentially even more travel. And it's just going to be the same with huge amounts of airlines, massive amount of supply in the hotel industry. What's your take on all this? Is it too early to tell?
Look, I'm always very careful with predictions, and people who maybe they have insights about travel behavior post COVID-19 that I don't have. I think one thing is clear: travel will change. I think the way we travel, and then again, you always have to look at what's the purpose. What's the travel purpose? So, is it leisure? Is it a conference? Is it for business? And I think. Is it a city center location? Is it a resort location? I think you have to look at the different travel purposes, destinations, and so forth. I think there is, not just one travel experience that will rebound all in the same way after COVID-19. I think it will happen in different stages. My personal take on it is that probably leisure travel is going to recover first. That individual corporate travel may be a little bit later, or even much later, because I think a lot of businesses now realize, hey, why do we need to travel so much? This Zoom meetings or Zoom calls or Teams, whatever you have, that's working too. Why do we need to hop on a plane, go to a different destination, meet maybe for a few hours? if it worked during COVID-19, why should it work post COVID-19? So I think a lot of that short haul, business related travel, which also incurs a lot of expenses and so forth, that may be reduced, or that will remain reduced, or that the recovery there will be much longer. But yes, leisure travel, I think wellness related travel, and also the conference. But I'm more optimistic about large events. So maybe 34, or let's say 50 plus participants. That may increase as well, because people still want to meet and they want to convene.
Sure.
I mentioned before that social aspect of meeting and networking. I mean, you don't just go and show up at a conference because of the great content. That's one reason, but you also go there for the networking.
Yeah.
And that can only happen, when you meet people, when you have that coffee or that drink at the bar. So I think there will be a need for that, probably sooner than that individual corporate travel, but later than that leisure travel. So I think it will come back in 3 stages. Again, that's my personal take. And that's also, I just read a report actually this morning that was also giving first indications about how they see the recovery. And then there's also a regional aspect to it. So I think you have to look at the different countries and where travel is happening. From what I'm hearing, for instance, in China, the hotels are almost back to pre-COVID levels, which would support that statement saying it will come back really fast. I think once that vaccine gets out and is distributed, I think it will also come back to Europe. The US, I don't know, but it looks still a big challenge there. How soon especially the outbound travel, and the US traveler is so important
to a lot of
especially
European
here
markets.
in Switzerland or to Europe. So I don't know when that is going to recover, but I think that may take also a little bit longer.
Yeah. Okay. Robert, if you look at, you just spoke about different markets, and if we look at your career, with having been a very fond representative of Intercontinental, you look at your stages in Prague, Düsseldorf, Beirut, Berlin, Paris, and so on and so forth, without mentioning all of them. Can you tell me a little bit about how you see, looking back at your career, how important those stages were for where you are now, running, I'm going to go on Olympia, probably one of the coolest resorts, at least in Europe. How the experiences you make in Berlin versus the experiences you make in Beirut, I imagine, are completely different. Can you explain to me a little bit how looking back now at your career, and I realize this when I do this with GMs, that you guys never look back. All you care about is where you are right now, what's on the agenda. So here's your moment, Robert. Here's your moment to look back and reflect a little bit for me on the stages that you've been to. And there is going to be a follow-up question, which you can mentally prepare already. I want to hear the weirdest experience you've made in any of those locations after you tell me what the different stages of your career has brought to you now.
Okay. Good. Well, I don't really have time then to think about that second question.
Good.
No, I mean, I got into this business because I wanted to travel and I wanted to experience also the world. That was one aspect of it. Next to the aspect of I always found hotels also to be exciting, great micro environments, and really the benefit that we as hoteliers have being in this profession is that we have so many opportunities, not just in the country where we come from, but basically around the world, and so many different aspects of it. And really, that's what I wanted when I first joined Intercontinental. I mean, they had a great program at the time. It was called the Fast Track program, where they promised you to send you around on 3 continents and 4 different countries, and develop you into a future general manager. And next to it, also pay for your MBA. So for me, that was like, oh wow, this is really great. I want to join this company. So, and I'm very, very grateful, not only for having been accepted at the time, because we had to go through a selection process, but then also really having that sort of, not only financial support, but that career progression support at the time, and that allowed me to go to different places, experience different hotels, and in different countries on different continents. And I think really, if you have that opportunity very early on in your career, it shapes you in so many different ways. It shapes your character. It hones your language skills. It makes your cultural awareness, more acute. And so there are so many aspects besides the pure professional one, that I think that, if you want to be a hotelier, especially on a big scale or an international stage, or where you have a large international exposure, all this helps you to sort of shape and form your character, your professional skills, your emotional skills as well. I mean, as you say, each place has a different emotional attachment from your things happen in different places where you get differently emotionally attached, or it means something different to you. So all that helps also, I think, later than on in your career, when you get the opportunity, like myself, to manage such a big and wonderful operation, to really balance all that out, because we are exposed to so many different things every day, and we need to make a lot of decisions. We don't always have time to really, or we don't have the luxury of that time to always reflect for a long time on those decisions. So sometimes you need to make them also intuitively, and that comes also with experience.
Yeah. If there's one thing, Robert, that you could tell the younger Robert Herr that just graduated from EHL, if you could give him one piece of advice looking back, what would it be?
I would say, to look at every experience, not as good as or bad. I would always say look at it sort of in a character building way.
Kind of way.
And for me, that was always the most important takeaway. I didn't always realize it at the time, but sort of in hindsight, I said, yeah, maybe at the time I didn't like this or I didn't like that, but actually that was good for me, because I'm maybe confronted with a similar situation now or in the future. And because of that experience, also, if it's not always the most positive experience, you know how to deal with it, and you're much more poised and maybe also more relaxed about it then, and less emotionally sort of involved.
Yeah. Now here comes the kicker question. You must have you must have 1,000 experiences like these, but give me one where you really, and I realize a GM wouldn't necessarily say this out loud, but at Smack we're quite okay saying this, where you really thought, what the fuck just happened? There must be an experience where you thought, or a guest did something silly, a member of staff. You don't have to. If you want to tell us who, but that's fine. But I imagine you don't necessarily need to tell us who. But there must be an experience or two where you thought to yourself, "What the hell just happened?"
Geez, yeah. There's so many. I mean.
But isn't that also the beauty of it, Robert? That you can sit here now and say, "Listen, I've experienced too many dumb stories to even think of one right now." That must be the beauty of the industry, right?
Exactly. So at the time, that's probably what I thought at the time, just the way you expressed it just now.
Yeah.
But then you look back at it, and then you either laugh at it or you take it sort of in strides. I mean, for me, there's no one particular. I mean, for us hoteliers, I think having guests running around naked on the corridor, or having to be confronted with a suicide in the hotel, or with a sudden death, or having a bomb exploded not too far from where you were.
Ooh, tell me about that story. That sounds like something not every hotelier might have experienced. Where was this? In what hotel, if I may ask?
Well, I was in Beirut at the time, and this is not the one that it wasn't a bomb, but what happened this summer in Beirut is of course horrible, and it wasn't the one at the time where Hariri was bombed up just in front of the hotel. I wasn't there at the time, but while I was at the hotel, there was two bomb explosions, sort of more in the southern part of Beirut. So, but still in the city where you worked, and that affects your business, and you don't know, are maybe any of my employees affected by it, or is there maybe a guest who just happened to be in that area, and so forth. So that's exactly what you said before. You say to yourself, oh, you always kind of prepare for that situation when it happens, but when it does happen, you want to make sure that you check all the boxes, that you really go through every procedural step that you need to do in order to make sure that everybody is accounted for,
Sure.
that everything is safe, that what other measures do you need to do, and sort of a little bit this kind of this crisis management situation. And then also, especially when you have family with you, then you also think, is this still a safe place for the family? And there's some other personal concerns, of course, that come up at the same time.
Yeah.
So I would say,
that was quite
these
an
moments.
experience.
I mean, this is probably a more extreme moment, but then again, you have you have all these other sort of weird stories that happen in the hotels directly. That some of them are sad, but they just, I always say hotel is always a microcosm of our society. So
Yeah, of course.
what happens in society also happens in hotels. So
Yeah.
that's just the nature of it.
Yeah. Robert, now let's talk maybe 12 months from now. Let's forget COVID for a second. How do you reckon all of this is going to pan out? You talked a little bit about how you reckon the recovery is going to go. Are we confident enough? I think that we can all safely agree. The very recent news of the vaccine is probably good news no matter who you ask. And it's maybe starting to restore some confidence that throughout 2021 the recovery process can start. At least it probably won't be completed, but it can start. Tell me a little bit about how you guys are forecasting, because I realize it's budget season, as you like, or it's almost over, probably the budget season. Tell me how a resort like you with multiple properties, multiple F&B outlets, a huge spa outlet, very important for you as well, as you said, is the conference and banqueting. How the hell did you budget 2021? Did you roll the dice? Did everybody have to pick a number? What did you do?
Almost. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, we put a lot of thought into our planning process. But it's very difficult, of course, to plan. So you have to make some assumptions. And the beauty about a budget process is that we can all do all the planning that we want when we hit January 1st and the world. I mean, we did a budget for 2020.
Yeah.
Not having in mind the pandemic.
Was going to,
so,
sure. Yeah.
The budget is good, so you are prepared for what you expect the next year is going to bring. But a budget is not, of course it is. You have numbers and you say, this is what I want to. This is how much income I want. These are the expenses that I'm willing to invest in order to generate that income and service that income. So. These are some key assumptions, and for next year we did our budget and we are planning on a recovery because I think we have to remain optimistic, because if you don't, unless you know that the world is going to fall apart next year, then of course you have to be realistic about it and say, look, we're not going to show a V-shaped recovery. But I think we have to go into 2021 with a sense of optimism and that the recovery will come. It will probably not happen in the first 3 months, but we expect a gradual recovery to happen as of the second quarter and going into the second half of the year next year. Also now and we did our budget before the news of the vaccine was out, but now the vaccine story obviously helps. As you said, I think the key word here is the travelers need to regain confidence. And by that, I don't mean just having confidence, not just having confidence to get back on a plane and to travel across the ocean or even on short haul flights. But I think the confidence that when you travel, you don't have to expect any surprise or bad surprise. And I think that was one of the reasons why also a lot of the confidence loss was it's not that people are so afraid maybe to get on a plane, but I think that once they are in another country and they don't know what's going to happen in that country, they may be shut down, locked down, or they have to quarantine, or they have to quarantine when they get back. All this uncertainty and these travel restrictions have made it very, very difficult for people to actually make decisions on their planning. So we think that by next year, once these restrictions are are lifted and there's more certainty, the confidence in travel will come back and people will start planning again. And
Yeah.
I think that has to happen first before we can really say that the recoveries have. But as soon as that level of confidence and that level of planning security is back, I am very, very optimistic that, as I mentioned before, not in all parts, but in certain parts, the recovery has a good chance of happening in the next year.
Yeah.
That said, it's going to be a multiple year recovery story. It's not all going to happen next year, or
Sure.
maybe not
Sure.
even in 2022. So it may take a few
Some
more months
patience.
after that.
Yeah, yeah. Robert, do you reckon it's all going to happen simultaneously throughout Europe, or is it safe to assume that there are certain countries, for whatever reason that may be, the reliance on international or maybe even intercontinental travel, that is where it's going to happen quicker? The reason I'm asking this is because, that there's if you look at the statistics and the predictions, which I realize may or may not be accurate because no one has ever experienced something quite like this. But the predictions are still very strongly that national travel is going to be a key driver. Do you feel the same specifically for you at the Buergenstock, or are you also very much banking on the fact that there is at least some local international travel, the Germans or the Austrians that will
Yeah.
potentially join you guys again?
Definitely. I mean, first of all, we're very lucky. Switzerland experienced a very strong domestic travel this summer.
Yeah.
So a lot of Swiss who probably would have traveled abroad, they opted to stay in the country. I am not sure, let's say I'm a little bit undecided if they would do the same thing next year.
Okay. Why is that, Robert?
Why? Because I think there's this, I think it was great. And a lot of Swiss said, hey, why don't we stay, let's not be adventurous this year.
Yeah.
Let's stay in our own country. Let's rediscover our own country. And I think there was a lot of campaigning also done sort of in the spring to tell the Swiss, why don't you rediscover or discover your own country? And that's what we experienced. We had a lot of guests coming from from parts of Switzerland that we hadn't seen here before. I mean, we've been open now for 2 years, or prior to that, 2 years before, and we hadn't seen that kind of clientele. So that was very positive. At the same time, I can imagine that by spring or summer next year, and if the situation is relatively safe, and like I said before, that confidence is back, I think the Swiss, that part, or at least that segment of the Swiss, they probably want to then go out again and go back and experience other countries. That's my personal take. But at the same time, I think if that is the case, we could also experience more inbound international travel to Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever we may, so this summer we lost obviously on the international travel, and we were able to not all of it, but we were able to compensate a big part of it with the domestic travel. And next year it may be a little bit different. That Swiss traveler is going to go more abroad, but then we may be able to get a little bit more of the international travel. I think it may take a little bit longer with the long haul international traveler.
Sure.
So especially from China or Far East Asia, and also maybe the US, that could take a little bit longer in terms of the recovery. So that could take maybe 18 to 24 months before that traveler comes back.
Yeah, yeah. Robert, this just like that, almost 45 minutes have passed. So I'm going to bother you with two more questions, and then I'm going to let you go. I can't help but ask, because obviously now with the Buergenstock collection, as it stands, you're a little bit away from the massive corporate world that where you previously were in, and there's been a lot of discussion about this, and you seem to be the perfect guy to ask this, so I can't help it. Tell me a little bit about how you think this whole discussion about whether it's easier for the corporate world, or whether it's easier for smaller hotel companies, which I realize, like you guys have with the Qatar Hospitality behind you. And there's been huge amount of news about whether Accor is going to merge and with whom they're going to merge, and whether this is the time for the corporates to merge, and obviously just a couple of years before COVID came along, Marriott and Starwood merged. Is that all just, as you say in German, Schall und Rauch? Is it just a little bit of a foggy discussion at the moment because people are are looking at all options, or is there some truth in the fact that this whole COVID-19 situation has also brought some some potential for partnerships and potentially even beyond that mergers that maybe would have otherwise not arisen? What's your opinion? And I realize this is way off topic and you're not in necessarily in the corporate world anymore, but you must have heard one or two things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the consolidation in our industry, hospitality, so whether it be, the big international hotel chains, operators, but even also ownership models, that's been a development and a process going on already before COVID-19. So you just mentioned, for instance, the Marriott Starwood merger
Yeah.
or acquisition. I think there, or Accor buying Mövenpick.
Yeah.
So there is that consolidation has been going on already before, and especially with the big international hotel operators, they, because that's, most of them are have shareholders, and of course they have to grow, and they cannot always just grow organically, but they have to grow by merging or acquiring other hotel companies so they can grow quick enough to fulfill those expectations and growth stories. And I think that will continue to happen. And also there's that continuous cost pressure and that efficiency. So, and you can only become more efficient, or a lot of your efficiency depends on whether you have scale. And
Sure.
the only way you can create scale is when you grow. So all these aspects were already important before COVID-19. Probably what COVID-19 will do now is kind of like an accelerator, if you want, that may force certain hotel companies, and maybe I'd say those that are squeezed in the middle. So the big ones, the IHGs, the Marriotts, the Hiltons, the Accors, they will continue to strive. They may, there may be some big mergers happening. That's possible. And then you have the niche players who are doing very well, who are very well positioned. I think they will continue to do well. But then you have those who are squeezed in the middle between the two, between the niche players and between the giants. And I think maybe now with COVID-19, what's going to happen is that you will see some acceleration. Once everybody has a little bit more confidence about about the recovery, I could see a lot of mergers and acquisitions potentially happening, especially the companies that are sort of squeezed in between.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a bit of an endless discussion because again, nobody knows exactly how it's going to pan out. But if you with the news that has been around, I think a certain level of uncertainty always plays with it as well. That has simply brought us to where we are. Speaking of where we are, Robert, if there's one thing you could change about the current situation in terms of traveling and COVID-19 and so on and so forth, what would you change?
If I could change something, so irrespective if I had the power or not.
Yes, correct.
Wow. I think what was probably, can you really blame? I think what was very unfortunate in this whole situation was sort of the lack of coordination between different countries, or lack of coordination of certain governments on how to handle travel restrictions, travel bans, quarantine restrictions. There's been so much confusion out there because every country, did their own thing. There was never sort of or at least it never transpired, sort of a joint effort, especially here in Europe, to have a uniform approach of how and by what criteria you declare part of a country a hotspot and when not. So it was very sort of every country did their own
segmented
thing, and I think that was very unfortunate because that just added to that whole insecurity. And I don't even know. I mean, and it changes all the time. So that's not very helpful. And if I could change one thing, that would probably be to get more, cross governmental coordination or cross border coordination, if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Couldn't agree more.
Especially in the sort of in the EU countries.
Yeah. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Robert, it's been fascinating. Thank you very much for your time. I realize there's a lot ahead. You guys have a lot planned for 2021, the World Economic Forum obviously being a big part of that. I wish you every success on behalf of everybody here at SMAG for what's around the corner. I'm very confident having met some of your team that you will do just fine. And I hope that we will be able to redo this interview at some point, or this chat at some point in person when the time permits. But thank you very much for your time, Robert.
Super. Thank you, Fritz. And it's been a pleasure for me. And thank you for having me on your show.
That's it for this episode, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Special thanks to our season sponsor, I Reckon You, hospitality's first customer data platform. Their philosophy is to stop buying software and building a framework. Their middleware platform connects a hotel's above property and on-premise systems, creating a frictionless flow of hotel and guest data that enhances the guest journey while increasing operational efficiency. Find out more at ireckonyou.com, and don't forget to check out what there is to know about SMAC at smac.media or on our YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook channel. We'll see you next time.